There were some dramatic developments in Israel's economic relations with neighboring countries near and far this week, including a massive natural gas deal with Egypt and a smaller but still very strategically significant missile defense deal with Germany. These deals are measured in billions of dollars and are by far the largest in Israel's history. In particular, the gas deal with Egypt is about far more than natural gas and could hopefully lead to a warming of diplomatic relations between the two countries. This will surely be high on the agenda as Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and President El-Sisi prepare for a historic summit later this month at the United States President Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate in Florida. But wait, there is more. Israel and the United Arab Emirates are also moving towards a joint project to build the next generation of air defensive systems, incorporating lessons that were learned in the past 2 years in which Israel has intercepted thousands of incoming weapons that were fired at us from multiple directions. Also, Israel Aerospace Industries stunned the world this week by revealing the system that will eliminate the weapon that was Israel's soft underbelly in this war. Germany is also announcing that it is literally doubling down on its investment in Israel's Arrow 3 systems, agreeing to buy another $3.1 billion worth of launchers, radars, and another $3.5 worth of additional purchases that are already in the pipeline, and we will bring all the details about Germany's procurement from Israel. Meanwhile, Hamas, Trump, and Turkey are all trying to talk to Qatar about who controls the ceasefire agreement in Gaza. A summit held this week in Doha ended without a decision on who will be the shaping force for Gaza, and even after the closed meeting led by the United States in Qatar without Israel, it is still unclear what the stabilization force for Gaza will look like. Therefore, without a clear mandate for the stabilization force, Hamas could present itself as the solution of governing the Gaza Strip, and it wants a new round of negotiations with Israel, while Israeli officials say that they're just trying to buy more time. But that doesn't mean that they're wasting time. Intelligence agencies around the world have noted an uptick in Hamas recruitment, and we'll tell you more about this. Israel isn't wasting any time either, preparing for a new offensive in Lebanon as Hezbollah terrorist militias refuse to disarm. We'll also bring you all the new revelations about the elimination of Hezbollah leader Sheikh Hassan Nasrallah in his bunker. Welcome to Boots on the Ground. I'm your host, Yair Pinto, and this is the Before the Weekend edition, in which we bring you all the truth that just slipped past us through this week. So let's get into the news from Israel. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi already understand very well what truly stands behind the massive natural gas agreement signed this week, as Israel is carrying out a multi-layered strategic move that will strengthen alliances in the Mediterranean region and the moderate Arab world, while blocking Turkey and Qatar's influence in the Gaza Strip, combined with required American support. The deal is expected to generate roughly 112 billion shekels for Israel's economy over the next several years and strengthen Israel's status as a regional energy powerhouse. It will also create a strong incentive for Egypt to be a good neighbor and help Israel in various other ways. This is also sure to make a lot of people in Washington happy, as good relations between Jerusalem and Cairo are important for many things America wants to do in this region, the Middle East. Also, this week, there was a lot of good news from Israel's defensive industries. Elbit, one of Israel's largest industrial conglomerates, signed an 8-year contract with the United Arab Emirates this week to develop an advanced air defensive system based on the laser technology. The deal was signed under complete secrecy, and it constitutes a security breakthrough since the outbreak of this war. Meanwhile, Israel and the aerospace industries stunned the world this week by announcing that the IDF will soon be equipped with an advanced system for detection, identification, disruption, and interception of UAVs and drones. The new system is a game changer and will enable efficient and effective area defense. I'm sure everyone is going to want it also. But the biggest defense industry news came out of Germany, which announced this week that it is signing a new purchase order for an additional $3.1 billion worth of the Arrow 3 launchers, the interceptor missiles, and the radar systems, nearly doubling the purchase that it made 2 years ago. The German military is engaged in a massive buildup, and it's ready to spend tens of billions of dollars on Israeli-built equipment. Meanwhile, in the Gaza Strip, the Hamas terrorist organization is showing signs of fear and concern. Hamas sources say that the organization is demanding a round of indirect negotiations with Israel to discuss issues related to the future of the Gaza Strip and the demand that it will disarm. Senior security officials say that Hamas is trying to buy time and assesses that the Trump administration changed its concept regarding disarmament, and it is also trying to change the rules of the game in order to make it harder for Israel to carry out eliminations. In related news regarding the transition to Phase B in the ceasefire deal with Hamas, without a clear mandate for the stabilization force, Hamas could present itself as the solution for governing the Gaza Strip. The Trump plan demands more from the countries that will form the force that they are willing to give, mainly regarding Hamas's disarmament, and so the United States president will have to decide whether to insist on this as a condition for moving to Phase B. Furthermore, even after the closed meeting led by the United States military in Qatar without Israel, it is still unclear what the stabilization force for Gaza will look like. Qatar's Prime Minister met in Washington with senators and Secretary of State Marco Rubio and pushed for rapid progress to the second phase of the ceasefire agreement in Gaza while trying to integrate Turkey into a stabilization mechanism without harming Hamas. So far, it looks like Azerbaijan, Indonesia, Bangladesh, and Pakistan may send soldiers, while Italy may suffice with placing a force at the Rafah border crossing and providing some training. In the north, it appears as if the IDF is organizing for fighting against Hezbollah to block an attack by the terrorist organization. But what is the danger posed by an attempt by terrorists to infiltrate from the ground? We'll take a closer look at all of that situation. And we'll also take a fresh look at the elimination of Hezbollah leader Sheikh Hassan Nasrallah in a tunnel under Beirut over a year ago. And in a related story, IDF military intelligence has noticed that Lebanese landlords are refusing to rent apartments to Hezbollah members outside of the Dahya neighborhood in Beirut, while the terrorist organization is struggling to pay rent for tens of thousands of displaced because of this war. This is sure to add to Hezbollah's headaches as it seeks to rebuild its capabilities and support amongst the Lebanese people. However, according to assessments, an IDF operation against Hezbollah will not take place before the Trump-Netanyahu meeting at the end of the month. As you can see, we have a lot to talk about today, so let's dive into the details. And today, our partner for this show is Leket Israel. We'll share more about them and how you can support Israel through this amazing organization later in this report. I'm Yair Pinto, and this is your Boots on the Ground just before the weekend edition, bringing you everything that slipped past us this week, together with the full truth about what's happening in Israel on day 805 of this war against Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis in Yemen, the Shia militias in Iraq, and all the other armed groups in this region operating under the control of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps, which is the head of the crumbling axis of evil in the Middle East. A moment before we start, I want to call on you to keep spreading the truth. Share, follow us, and most importantly, do not forget to press that subscribe button if you haven't already, so that you stay tuned to the truth in real time and never miss another episode of Boots on the Ground. And now, we are starting today's report with the news about the biggest natural gas deal in Israel's history. In a recorded statement that was released on Wednesday evening, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announced approval of the massive deal with Egypt and Israel, billions of dollars worth for the gas development on the shores just in the Mediterranean Sea. The Israeli approval comes after heavy pressure from the Trump administration on Netanyahu to approve this deal. The US is also pushing for a meeting between Netanyahu and Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, with the condition for holding it being that Israel signs the gas agreement. In his announcement, Netanyahu noted that the deal to sell Egypt natural gas from Israel's Leviathan field will bring about 58 billion shekels into the state treasury. In the first 4 years, $500 million shekels per year will come in various kinds of taxes as the companies make investments in developing the infrastructure. Later, when the gas starts flowing, tax revenues will soar to 6 billion shekels every single year, with added that this money will strengthen education, health, infrastructure, security, and the future of the next generations. But the benefits to Israel from signing these deals so far beyond money, as important as that is, are the cooperation with Egypt. So by signing this deal with our next door neighbor to the south, Israel is also sending a strong signal to other regional actors about our strategic depth and our regional stability. Israel and Egypt share an interest in blocking the Turks from expanding their own influence into the eastern Mediterranean, and this goal is also shared by Greece and also Cyprus. It also enhances the strategic leverage that Israel has gained in the last 2 years of the Swords of Iron War by defeating Iran and its regional proxies. So Turkey has many reasons to not be happy about this deal, and the many benefits that will flow to its regional rivals, specifically Israel, Egypt, but also Greece and Cyprus. And beyond that, moderate Arab states, primarily Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, have many reasons to be delighted because of this deal, as it gives them many opportunities to build a stronger relations with Israel that they'd like to have, and this also comes as Turkey expands as well as Iran. On that note, it also makes it harder for Turkey to get involved in Gaza as it would like to, and this is going to be quietly applauded by almost everyone in the region, foremost Israel, Egypt, but also Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, and even the Palestinian Authority, which all share a common interest in preventing Hamas from rehabilitating in the Gaza Strip and bringing Turkey and Qatar into Gaza. Keep in mind that these two states are part of the Muslim Brotherhood alliance that fully supports Hamas in Gaza. All the moderate Arab states understand that the entry of Turkey and Qatar into Gaza means undermining their governmental stability moving forward. This is due to the fact that the Muslim Brotherhood franchises in those states will see that Hamas survived the war and even succeeded in bringing in, through main gates, Turkey's forces to so-called protect Gaza's residents from Israel as a major victory that could inspire them to try to do the same thing in Jordan, in Egypt, and in other moderate Arab states in the Middle East. So the regimes in these countries do not want to see the Muslim Brotherhood achieve any kind of victories, and that's why they are quietly applauding and even supporting Israel in private while saying all kinds of terrible things about us in the media in public. And with all of that in mind, a deal to sell Israel's natural gas to Egypt is a declaration of intent between Israel and Egypt, in which Israel sells gas cheaply in order to save the faltering Egyptian economy, but it will demand the stability of the alliance in which the Egyptians will be the dominant factor in the multinational force in Gaza, in the rehabilitation and the construction works, where construction royalties could also pay for these ready gas. So to sum up, this is a huge win for the forces of moderation and stability in the Middle East, and a huge loss for the Muslim Brotherhood and the Ayatollah regime in Tehran. As a footnote, it is also going to produce a lot of good things for the ordinary people of both Egypt and Israel, and since I'm one of those people here in Israel, I'm personally very glad to hear these great news and share them with all of you. Of course, there's another person who is very happy about these news, and that's United States President Donald Trump, but he also has some new problems. He does not want to antagonize his friend, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, so he will probably have to find some way to smooth things over with him. And we'll keep an eye on to see what's going to happen in the next US-Turkish meeting and the relations between these two nations. However, for now, we're celebrating the largest export of deal of gas in the history of the State of Israel, which also establishes our status as a regional energy powerhouse whose neighbors are dependent upon. This deal comes after months of intensive negotiations, and we can look forward to a massive influx of capital and new jobs in Israel as the infrastructure for this new project begins to be built. And that will be a very good thing for the economic recovery that we badly need after 2 years of war. So here at TBN Israel, we will continue to bring you the full truth about what's happening in this land, and that includes more news from Israel's economic sector, as large export deals and defense equipment deals were also announced this week. So keep spreading the truth, what's coming out of Israel, with as many people as possible, and don't forget to press that subscribe button if you haven't already, so that you never miss another episode of Boots on the Ground. And speaking of boots on the ground, I want to speak to you for just a few moments about one of our partners, the partner for today's video, because they're also operating on the ground here in Israel doing vitally important work. For instance, they're helping people like Naomi, who was only 6 years old when she learned the terrifying pain of starvation in the Nazi ghettos. She survived the war, but today in Israel, she and thousands of others Holocaust survivors are facing a heartbreaking reality as the threat of hunger has returned. For these survivors, proper nutrition is a matter of life and death. Their bodies, already scarred by the trauma of their youth, are incredibly fragile. A lack of fresh, healthy food weakens their bodies and reawakens the psychological terror of the past. So when a survivor of the Holocaust cannot afford to put food on the table, they retreat in shame. They sit alone in an empty apartment, cut off from the community that they desperately need, as hunger silences their homes. But you have the power to break this silence. Leket Israel, the National Food Bank of Israel, is the shield protecting them from this indignity. They rescue and deliver fresh, nourishment-rich produce and deliver it directly to survivors and the soup kitchens that serve them, because we're on a mission to be a blessing to the people of Israel through Leket Israel. As Rachel, a survivor in the care home, said, when she saw the Leket Israel trucks arrive, they unload a bounty. It warms the heart to know that they exist. We could not protect them from the horrors of the Holocaust, but as followers of Jesus, Yeshua, we can protect them from the ravages of malnutrition and loneliness right now. So be their shield, restore their health and their dignity, strengthen these Holocaust survivors in their final years. Visit nourishasurvivor.org. Again, that's nourishasurvivor.org today, and lend a hand. And now we're getting back into the news and continuing with the theme of Israel's economic recovery after 2 years of war. The company, Elbit Systems, signed a large-scale defensive contract with the United Arab Emirates this week. On Wednesday, this previously secret arrangement was revealed in a report on the website Intelligence Online under the deal, which will unfold over 8 years. The sides will jointly develop a next-generation electronic defensive system intended to protect both civilian and military aircrafts. The new system is expected to be a technological leap based on Elbit's well-known J-Music system, which works to mislead heat-seeking missiles using laser beams, and the joint version will be broader and more powerful. And this project, defined as the Joint Governmental Initiative, marks the continued tightening of the security relations between Jerusalem and Abu Dhabi. However, according to the report, Elbit updated the stock exchange that the client demanded full confidentiality regarding the contract details, and experts note that the demand for secrecy is self-evident, since this is the first major defense contract signed between an Arab state and an Israeli company since the outbreak of the October 7th war. Furthermore, the deal was signed against the backdrop of complex reports in the Wall Street Journal news portal, according to which Iran is trying to exploit the business space in the United Arab Emirates to transfer funds to Hezbollah terrorist organization through shell companies in that area. Despite these challenges, it appears that the security partnership between the states continue to deepen in order to create a technological front against shared threats. In other words, the Abraham Accords are working exactly as they were intended to, and this gives a powerful incentive to other countries to join this alliance as soon as possible. I'm looking at you, Indonesia, and also Saudi Arabia, but we understand that this is not simple for you, and we will have patience. But I am sure that in the course of time, the benefits of joining will so outweigh the hardships that you simply won't be able not to join any longer. In any case, here at TBN Israel, we will continue to press for the truth and share it. Now, we'll move to the next defensive export deal that Israel made this week. But before that, I call on you to hit that subscribe button so that you never miss another episode of Boots on the Ground. Israel's Ministry of Defense announced on Wednesday evening that the German army approved the expansion of the deal to sell the Israeli Arrow 3 air defensive system to Germany in the amount of an additional $3.1 billion, bringing the combined total to $6.7 billion, the largest defense export deal in Israeli history. As part of the expansion of the deal, Israel's Ministry of Defense and Germany's Ministry of Defense agreed on a significant increase in the production rate of Arrow 3 and the interceptors, including the launchers, which will be supplied to Germany and will significantly improve its air defensive capabilities. It's worth noting in this context that many other countries around the world, from Finland to Thailand, have recently announced purchases of Israeli air defensive systems, which proved themselves in the last 2 years, in which the IDF intercepted thousands of rockets and missiles fired at us from several different directions. The Arrow 3 system, in particular, demonstrated impressive operational capabilities during the war, with many dozens of successful interceptions from the Houthis in Yemen to Iran itself. It was developed and also produced jointly by the Homa administration in Mafat, the United States Missile Defense Agency, MDA, and Israel Aerospace Industries, which is the prime contractor for developing the Arrow air defensive systems. It wouldn't surprise me if other NATO countries will also want to buy this system soon, and possibly also our new friends in the Persian Gulf. In addition, the Israeli industries announced this week that the IDF may soon receive a significant reinforcement to deal with the wave of smuggling of weapons and drugs along the border with Egypt and Jordan that is carried out using drones. Israel Aerospace Industries will present Swarm Guard, an advanced defensive system for detection, identification, disruption, and interception of UAVs and drones developed and produced according to the requirements and the needs of Israel's defensive establishment. The system was first deployed and developed as part of the lessons of the war, and in recent months it was demonstrated twice successfully to senior defensive officials. The assessment is that the IDF will request to deploy the system on the border with Egypt and on the Jordanian border, alongside the operational requirement to deploy the system also on the Lebanese border. There is an urgent need for these systems on all of our borders, and the factories will have to build them and get them out to the IDF and their units as quickly as possible. At Israel Aerospace Industries, they say that the UAS-C system constitutes an addition that integrates easily with existing detection systems and enables efficient area defense, ensuring effective protection in every operational scenario. They also say that the advanced command and control system combines unique algorithms, artificial intelligence capabilities, and machine learning for real-time identification and analysis of threats while managing processes and decision-making. This enables a rapid response to threats while maintaining human involvement in the decision-making process. To date, Israel Aerospace Industries have sold hundreds of systems for detecting and intercepting drones worldwide in a total volume of hundreds of millions of dollars. Countries in Asia, Europe, and the United States have equipped themselves with systems that are used to defend ground facilities, mobile platforms that are operating in motion, strategic infrastructures, and more. It's important to point out in this context that the conflict in Ukraine has demonstrated the fact that the war is becoming more and more dominated by computers, drones, and robots. And we have seen aspects of this in the Swords of Iron War, here in Israel as well. This has led to many advancements in these technological areas, and Brigadier General Yaron Shering, the head of the AI and Autonomy Directorate in Mafat at the Ministry of Defense, said this week that we integrated on the battlefield tens of thousands of tools, from drone swarms to ground maneuvering robotic teams. These systems took part in a variety of exercises and scenarios that included connectivity to NATO systems as well, in which the defensive of the ports from hostile drones, UAVs, and other unmanned aircrafts was successfully demonstrated, as well as against ground threats. The AI and the Autonomy Directorate, together with the IDF, accelerated innovative developments by startups, defensive companies, and research bodies in order to integrate them on the battlefield and preserve the relative advantage on land, in the air, and at sea. Israel is at the beginning of this technological path. We are only at the start of the revolution. In the coming years, in light of the growing need, we will significantly increase the robotic force and the structure of this weapon. Of course, we will be sharing this with our friends in NATO, especially the United States, so the next time that you hear someone demanding to know what America gets from its alliance with Israel, you can tell them about all of these amazing things. In any case, here at TBN Israel, we will continue to bring you the full truth about what's happening in Israel, so keep spreading it. And most importantly, do not forget to hit that subscribe button so that you never miss another episode of Boots on the Ground. And now, we're switching our focus to events inside the Gaza Strip. Hamas is seeking to open a new round of indirect negotiations with Israel, but according to the Israeli security officials, this is mainly a move intended to buy time and change the rules of this game. According to the movement and the sources of Hamas that are quoted in the Ashrak al-Awsat media portal, Hamas wants to discuss a series of issues related to the future of the Gaza Strip, including the disarmament of the organization, the reconstruction of Gaza the day after, the identity of the governing body in the Gaza Strip, and the role of the technocratic Palestinian committee that will be established. In addition, issues such as opening the Rafah border crossing, lifting the Israeli blockade, the withdrawal of the IDF, and the rules of the internationally recognized force that are supposed to be discussed. According to the report, the departure of the Hamas leadership from the Gaza Strip has not been raised in these talks at all. Furthermore, within Hamas, there is disappointment with the United States' response to the elimination of the senior figure Raed Said last week by the IDF. They say that this is a violation of the ceasefire, and they argue that contradictory American statements cannot be considered justification, and see the United States as a party that provides Israel with backing for violating the ceasefires. Despite these contacts continue in Cairo, in Doha, and in Istanbul, sometimes with the presence of 2 or 3 mediators, and always with the knowledge of Egypt, Qatar, and Turkey. From Hamas's perspective, the goal is a round of negotiations in which an Israeli delegation and American representatives also participate, so that the Trump administration will exert pressure on Israel to advance with its plan, whose declared aim is regional stability. Israeli security officials estimate that the new demands are meant to pretend flexibility ahead of the Netanyahu-Trump meeting, and to prevent a situation in which the American president gives Israel a green light to fully conquer the Gaza Strip. Beyond that, in Israel, it is emphasized that Hamas still refuses to return the remains of the last Israeli soldier that was kidnapped into the Gaza Strip, his remains, in a deliberate foot-dragging system. At this time, despite the talk of disarmament in the Gaza Strip, Hamas leaders, the most recent of them, Khalil al-Haya, repeatedly declared that the organization will not give up its weapons, period. According to the assessment, Hamas believes that the Trump administration has changed its approach regarding disarmament and is therefore trying to buy time through a new drawn-out negotiation, whether around freezing the use of weapons or transferring part of them to an agreed-upon party, while relying on the United States security concept that sees the Middle East more as an arena of partnerships than of a long-term military commitment. And here at TBN Israel, we will continue to report about everything that's happening in this region and in the Gaza Strip, so don't forget to share this content with as many people as possible. Let's continue. We're now switching our focus to regional developments. The United States Central Command led a summit in Doha, Qatar on Wednesday with the participation of about 45 countries dealing with the international stabilization forces that will be deployed inside the Gaza Strip and oversee the ceasefire with Hamas. Israel had no representation at these closed initial meetings in which information was presented about the planning status of the forces' establishment. However, the Americans asked the participating countries to detail their possible contribution to the force, some with troops, some with money, and some with training and with infrastructure or instruction. Another meeting is expected to take place regarding this in January. Western diplomats that are familiar with the discussion said that even after the meeting in Qatar, it is still not clear what the ISF will look like, and the Americans are still examining the willingness of different countries to commit to the force. Therefore, it has not yet been determined what role each country will play, and the issue remains open. At the meeting, representatives from the European Union suggested to the Americans that are examining the training of the Palestinian police officers in the West Bank and training officers who will be stationed in Gaza and be part of the ISF. Beyond that, amongst the possible countries that may send soldiers to the Gaza Strip as part of the stabilization forces are Indonesia, Azerbaijan, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. Italy has also expressed willingness to send troops to Gaza, but it is possible that in the end, this will be limited to training only and not to forces on the ground inside the Gaza Strip. In any case, the Italians are dominant in the training aspect and also in the policing force that will be stationed at the Rafah border crossing. At the same time, the Americans are conducting contacts with 15 to 20 countries that are relevant to assisting the forces. The expectation in the United States is that the meeting in Doha would jumpstart the establishment of the forces against the backdrop of the reluctance of the countries to send troops in due to the possibility that they could get caught up in exchanges of fire with Hamas terrorists or with the IDF. Furthermore, despite the assessment, it is not clear whether rules of engagement for the force were formulated, including its rules for opening fire, the question of arming its soldiers, and with what types of weapons, where it will be deployed, where it will train, etc. Due to Israeli positions, Turkey was not invited to the meeting, but this does not mean that Ankara will not send soldiers into this force. For now, the Americans are not imposing this, but the final word has not yet been said, and there are also indications that Turkey is working to block countries that are prepared to send forces. The start date for force deployment is also still unclear. The Americans are talking about the month of January, and the assessment is that in the coming weeks, it will mainly be established and trained, apparently, in a third country in this region. According to assessments, the force will initially be deployed in the Rafah area, meaning on territory inside the yellow line under the IDF's control. There is also a demand by Washington for an American general to head the ISF, and the leading candidate for this is General Jasper Jeffers, who headed the Ceasefire Monitoring Commission in Lebanon. It is important to point out that President Trump's plan for Gaza rests on two central components: the establishment of a multinational stabilization force and the disarmament of Hamas. In practice, both components are stuck, and Hamas is trying to leverage the deadlock to its advantage. In recent months, an internal debate has been taking place inside Hamas as a camp led by Khaled Mashal is proposing a long-term ceasefire storage of the weapons and a halt of military activities against Israel, perhaps even transferring rockets and missiles to an agreed third party. And then, opposite them, stands the second camp of the terrorist organization led by Khalil al-Khaya, which vehemently opposes handing over any kinds of weapons and sees them as a core element of the organization's identity. Therefore, even if the Hamas leadership were to accept compromise, there is no certainty that the forces on the ground would accept it as well. And to this, you can add the fact that the United States is struggling to recruit states to the stabilization forces, and Muslim countries that are fearing being identified with a foreign occupation are not prepared to send soldiers to a mission defined as peace enforcement against Hamas. Some are prepared to assist only with maintaining separation lines and stabilizing the situation, not with disarming the terrorist organization. The result is that without a clear mandate and without agreement on disarmament, the chances of creating an effective multinational force are very low. In this situation, Hamas may present itself as the only actor capable of producing stability in Gaza and of freeing Trump's plan from deadlock, while in practice preserving its military power amongst the Palestinians in Gaza. Now, the ball is in Washington's court, whether to insist on disarmament of the terrorist organization as a fundamental condition or to introduce flexibility that will be interpreted as an achievement for the Hamas terrorist group. And here at TBN Israel, we will continue to bring you the whole truth about what's happening in this land, but we need your support. So if you still haven't clicked the subscribe button just yet, now is the time. So give a click on the subscribe button. Help us share the truth, boots on the ground style. And now we're switching our focus to the northern arena, and the war that we have been warning for months is coming with Hezbollah in Lebanon. The lower city composed of the tunnels that are dug underneath the Dahya neighborhood in Beirut is not as sprawling and deep as that in the Gaza Strip, mainly because of the type of soil, which is not as stable. But it is already clear in the IDF's intelligence directorate that the terrorist organization Hezbollah will try to hide most of its assets inside tunnels and bunkers beneath residential buildings in the Shiite quarter of South Beirut in Lebanon. Recently, intelligence officials were even surprised to discover that civilians in the Lebanese capital are refusing repeated requests by Hezbollah to rent them apartments outside of the Dahya area out of fear that these will be bombed by the IDF. The warm-up for the operation that the IDF is planning in the north and is pressing the political echelon to approve came about a month ago with the assassination of Hezbollah's chief of staff, Haytham Ali Tabtabi, that might have been the start of a wider conflict, but Hezbollah decided to continue the policy of restraint and containment, which in the years before this war was actually Israel's approach, and did not fire even a single mortar shell in response to the elimination of its highest-ranking commander. The escalation round, however, is not expected to look like this, and the IDF assesses that Hezbollah will act according to an organized fire plan with the launching of hundreds of missiles, rockets, drones, and explosive UAVs over several days when hostilities commence. So unlike the rounds against Gaza over the years, and also against Hezbollah from time to time, this time there will already be a built-up mechanism for a return to a ceasefire. This is that same efficient and seasoned war room from the past year that includes American and Lebanese officers and divides its activities between Beirut and the Northern Command headquarters in Tzfat in Israel. In any case, security officials assess that Israel will not embark on this operation without the consent of the United States President Donald Trump, and therefore it is doubtful that the move will take place before Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's visit to the White House at the end of this month. And with all of this in mind, IDF military intelligence estimates that Hezbollah, for now, prefers to continue observing the IDF's almost daily strikes and to manage its internal struggles in Lebanon, which, in its view, are more controllable. And the organization's hegemony as a political civilian movement has also been damaged in the past year, and the terror group is struggling to pay rent for tens of thousands of internally displaced Lebanese who have still not returned to their ruined homes in southern Lebanon following the IDF's ground operation. So with that in mind, Hezbollah will continue to rebuild mainly through self-production and the conversion of its rockets into precision missiles, and the intelligence echelon believes that Israel will have to keep fighting it at any price. However, the more the discourse about Hezbollah's disarmament becomes concrete and the collection of its weapons is carried out by force, the more aggressive Hezbollah will become. Hezbollah has absolutely no intention of voluntarily surrendering its weapons, and the Lebanese army, for its part, is maintaining a statesman-like posture in this mission, so they're not really aggressive about it. Seeing this, Hezbollah is reportedly trying to spread its eggs into a wider basket, but that too is not working. So, as noted, the IDF has identified a new phenomenon related to the difficulty of renting apartments to Hezbollah operatives. Thus, for example, as part of the move out of the Dahya into other neighborhoods of Beirut, operatives of Hezbollah are trying to rent apartments in order to house their families there. But it's not easy, because everybody knows that no one will compensate them for the collateral damage that will occur in their home when the IDF strikes whatever military infrastructure Hezbollah places in these apartments. So another pressure point that will influence Hezbollah's decision-making is political, because in May, elections will be held in Lebanon, and the IDF believes that for the current Secretary General, Naim Qassem, who is 72 years old and lacks charisma, internal cohesion, and the restoration of his organization's legitimacy inside the country, these are the main goals of this organization: to rebuild and to stay in power. So they don't want another bloody confrontation with Israel at this time. So it seems that the challenge will not be the destruction of the weapons factories, but also the hunt for the mid-level commanders who run this operation. They still have at their disposal a protection unit in Hezbollah that did its homework since last autumn. Hezbollah is investing a great deal in securing its assets, and the intelligence echelon estimates that reconstruction budgets from Iran will even grow in the coming years, beyond the more than $700 million a year that Tehran allocated to Hezbollah. The Iranians still see Hezbollah as a central proxy project and are acting to ensure that it does not lose influence in Lebanon. So, keep spreading the truth, share, follow us, and most importantly, do not forget to pray for this situation. Pray for wisdom to our leaders, pray for your leaders, pray for the IDF soldiers, pray for the peace of Jerusalem. In the days of Yeshua, Jesus, thousands of Hannukahs were lit in Jerusalem. And in these difficult months, we've seen that people naturally look for light. They look for hope, for something solid.
That's right. Now, Jesus said, "I am the light of the world." And during this war, we've seen that light in every person in this country, and especially in the unity throughout Israel, in acts of kindness, in moments of survival that shouldn't have happened. So guys, it's night number 5. We're halfway through the holiday of Hannukah. Join us in singing these Jewish blessings. If you don't understand that, they simply say many things, and then we're light of the world, and God blessed us and commanded us to be a light of the world and to light the candles of Hanukkah.
And God made miracles to our forefathers and to us.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר קידשנו במצוותיו וציוונו להדליק נר של חנוכה. אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם שעשה ניסים לאבותינו בימים ההם בזמן הזה. Amen.
Mati, what does the Shamash stands for?
Shamash is similar to the word in the New Testament, diakonos, which is dean in modern English, which is the one who lights everyone else with a light. Who is that person?
Yeshua.
We identify him as the Messiah, as Jesus, Yeshua. Exactly. By the way, guys, Yair and I have a debate whether or not you're supposed to say Amen at the end of every blessing or just at the end. You might have noticed.
Well, I think Amen means basically acceptance with the person that is praying the blessings, right? So you can say it a lot if you trust me.
There's a common understanding in Jewish tradition that for every 2 Jews there are 3 opinions, and we embody exactly that.
Yeah, but here in TBN, I'm always right. So guys,
Except for when you're wrong.
Thanks for joining us for this lighting of the Hannukah tonight. Keep praying for the peace of Jerusalem, and until you visit us here in person.
Happy Hanukkah, guys.
Shalom.
Hello, this is Mati here in Jerusalem with TBN Israel.
This is Yair Pinto from TBN Israel here in Jerusalem. TBN Israel is keeping viewers informed with Israel-focused news, culture, and what God is doing in this land.
Support TBN Israel today online at tbn.org/Israel. Thank you.